I want to start off with what is arguably the largest single, certainly from our vantage point, case before you, if we can call it that, which is Sprint and T-Mobile. A couple of weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal reported that your staff at least has some resistance, that was the word they used, to the deal, at least without structural remedies. Is that true?
Well, I can't comment on a pending merger. But, suffice it to say our regular process allows for the staff to communicate to the parties if there are particular issues, if there's additional data or economic support we need. And I think that was probably what was being reflected in some of the reporting that went on. But we will see. The investigation is ongoing, and we have had meetings with the parties, and it'll continue.
Yeah, how many more meetings? I know they've been quite active. And obviously, your role here is a very important one, in addition to the staff's. Have you made up your mind yet?
I have not made up my mind. Again, as I said, the investigation continues. We've requested some data from the companies that will be forthcoming. We don't have a set number of meetings or necessarily a timeline. We have a timing agreement with the parties, which they can't close the transaction sooner than a certain period of time. But as I've said, I've been very open and transparent with merging parties that we would be open to meeting as long as there's a need to meet, and we will continue to do so.
It's an interesting transaction in terms of some of the ways that they are portraying it, making in that obviously the idea of a market of 4 going to 3, some would say, well, that's a red flag from antitrust. But they're also making a very strong argument on the national security grounds for the deal, the advent of 5G. That, in fact, their combination, separately capital starved, together have the ability to really, truly bring 5G in a way that Verizon and at&t don't. Does that resonate at all with you and the staff? Is that an important argument to be made from an antitrust point of view, or does that not really actually part of the argument that you'll be considering?
Well, sometimes those factors do figure into our consideration. So where it is important is when they raise efficiency arguments. When a merger creates efficiencies, which is actually good for the consumer, we factor those in, but there are strict guidelines about those. The efficiencies that a merger provides needs to be merger specific, meaning that you couldn't otherwise get these benefits from it. They also need to be verifiable. They can't be pies in the sky, and it has to be an important element. As far as the number of 4 to 3, obviously, the more competitors you have in any market, you might have more competition, but there is no magical number in any particular market where you don't have barriers to entry for new competitors to come in and restrain prices. That could just be one competitor. That could be fine. Obviously, in these types of industries that are regulated, you can't just go out and put up cell sites all around. So there is a barrier to entry. There's a regulatory barrier to entry. And those are factors we consider. But there is no magical number. There's no 3, 4, 5, 2. It is what the facts and the economic evidence show us.
And so what is your sense in terms of that, in terms of what will happen to pricing? This is arguably the most important bill that every American pays each month. And there are those who argue that price competition will come to an end as a result of 3 large competitors, as opposed to sort of an insurgent in the form of T-Mobile and, of course, Sprint.
So those are exactly the types of issues that we're investigating. Will there be a price effect? Will there be an increase in ultimately the price to the consumers for their cell phone bills, as well as their broadband? With the advent of the innovations that is happening with 5G and other technologies, you're going to be able to use that phone for more than just communicating with your best friend or texting. You're getting your media, you're getting video, and we want to be sure to encourage that. But ultimately, is there going to be a price effect when those two combine? There's also the other theory. When you have that combination and there's few competitors, will there be what's called coordinated effects between them? Meaning that you won't have the same incentive to compete with the other players because it is in their best interest to not compete on prices.
Yeah.
And so those are the factors, and there's strict guidelines that we follow based on a case law handed to us, and we are continuing to investigate that.